Before we start, you need to understand something about the Navajo Nation. This isn't America the way you know it. We're a sovereign nation within the United States, 27,000 square miles across Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. Our laws are different. Our police enforce both federal law and traditional law, and some things we deal with, they don't exist in your police manuals. If you've ever been to the Four Corners area, the real reservation, not the tourist spots, leave a comment. And if you haven't, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you think about the American Southwest. My name is Mosi Ashki, and I'm a police officer with the Navajo Nation Police Department, stationed in Shiprock, New Mexico. I've been back on the res for 6 months now, after spending 10 years with LAPD. I thought I knew police work. I thought I'd seen everything a cop could see in one of the biggest, most violent cities in America. I was wrong. The things I deal with here, they don't have FBI classifications. They don't appear in criminal databases. And when you call for backup, you better hope your sergeant believes you, because the nearest federal agent is 3 hours away, and they sure as hell won't understand what you're reporting. After my parents died in a car accident when I was 7, I was raised by my grandmother in Shiprock. Shimasani, that's what we call our grandmothers, tried to teach me the old traditions, the language, the ceremonies, the stories. But I was angry. My heart was filled with the pain of losing my parents, and I rejected it all. As soon as I turned 18, I left. I went as far away as I could. Los Angeles seemed like another planet compared to the high desert of the Navajo Nation. I made detective with LAPD by the time I was 30. I was good at my job. Maybe because I'd spent my whole life learning to see things others missed, even if I'd rejected the traditional teachings that trained me to notice. But then my grandmother got sick. Stage 4 cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months. I came home. She lasted 8 months, long enough to see me apply to the Navajo Nation Police. Long enough to make me promise I'd stay. Long enough to tell me stories I'd refused to listen to as an angry teenager. Stories about things that lived in the desert. Things that walked on 2 legs but weren't human. Things that our people had been dealing with since long before the white man came to this land. I thought they were just stories. Legends to scare children into behaving. Traditional wisdom wrapped in supernatural clothing. Then my grandmother died, and 3 days later, I started my first shift with the Navajo Nation Police. The Shiprock Station is a low, modern building on Highway 64, built from tan brick that blends with the desert landscape. The famous Shiprock Formation, Tse Bitai in Navajo, the rock with wings, looms in the distance, a massive volcanic rock rising 1,800 feet from the desert floor, sacred to our people, forbidden to climb since the 1970s. Sergeant Desba Bitsui met me on my first day. She was maybe 48, with iron gray hair pulled back in a traditional bun, and eyes that seemed to look right through you. She'd been with the department for 25 years and had a reputation for being tough, fair, and deeply knowledgeable about both modern policing and traditional ways. "Officer Ashki," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that was stronger than it looked. "Welcome home. Your Shimasani spoke of you often. She was proud you were coming back, even if she wished it hadn't taken her dying to bring you." The blunt assessment stung because it was true. "Thank you, Sergeant. Call me Desba when it's just us. Save the formality for the brass and the tribal council." She gestured for me to follow her into the station. "You worked homicide in LA? 3 years as a detective, 7 years before that in patrol. Good, you've seen violence. You know how to process crime scenes. But this isn't LA, Mosi. The violence here, sometimes it has different rules." I must have looked skeptical because she smiled slightly. "You don't believe me yet. That's fine. Your grandmother said you'd need to see for yourself. Just promise me one thing. When you see something that doesn't make sense, something that your LAPD training can't explain, you'll keep an open mind and you'll follow the protocols. What protocols? She pulled a laminated card from her pocket and handed it to me. 7 rules, typed in both English and Navajo. Navajo Nation Police, Traditional Protocols. Never say the word Yi Naudlushi out loud, especially at night. Call them the witch if you must refer to them. 2. If you see an animal acting too human, do not make eye contact. Leave immediately and report it. 3. Do not whistle at night, it calls things to you. 4. If someone knocks on your door at night and calls your name, verify who they are before opening. 5. Corpse powder, ash from the dead, left on your doorstep means you're marked. Call a hatali, traditional healer, immediately. As during new moon, do not drive alone on Highway 491 past midnight. 7. If you hear your name called from the desert at night, never answer. It's never who you think it is. I read through the list twice, then looked at Desba. These are folklore, superstition. We're law enforcement, not what? Not Navajo? Her expression hardened. You spent 10 years in LA trying to be Bilagana. White, that's fine. But you're back on Diné land now, and here the old rules still apply. These protocols were written by my predecessor, Lieutenant Adakai, after he lost 2 officers in 2003. They're not suggestions. They're not cultural sensitivity guidelines. They're survival instructions. Officers died because they didn't follow these? Officers died because they thought like you're thinking right now. That traditional knowledge is just superstition. That modern police work is all you need. Desba took the card back and tapped it against her palm. Your grandmother told me you were stubborn. She also said you were smart enough to learn. Let's hope she was right about both. Before I could respond, another officer entered the station. He was younger than me, maybe 26, with the build of someone who'd grown up doing hard physical work. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished to a high shine. Mosi, this is Officer Tasba Key. He'll be your partner for the first few weeks while you get oriented. Desba nodded to both of us. Tasba, show him the ropes, and brief him on the Little Water situation. After Desba left, Tasba shook my hand. His grip was firm, his expression friendly but cautious. Heard you worked LAPD. That's pretty far from home. Seemed like a good idea at the time. And now? Now my grandmother's dead and I'm back. Jury's still out on whether it's a good idea. I gestured to the protocol card Desba had shown me. She give you the same speech? The traditional rules thing? Tasba's expression became more guarded. Those aren't just speeches, brother. You grew up here. You know the stories. I know stories. That doesn't make them real. Yeah? He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It depicted a set of footprints in red desert sand. They started as human prints, bare feet, clear toes, normal stride. Then, over the course of maybe 20 feet, they transformed. The foot became more elongated. The toes turned into claws. The stride lengthened impossibly. By the end of the sequence, they were coyote tracks. Took this photo myself 3 months ago, Tasba said. About 15 miles north of here, near the Chaco Canyon turnoff. Tracked them for 2 miles. Started human, turned to coyote, then back to human again near an old hogan. I examined the photo closely, looking for signs of manipulation or staging. The lighting was consistent. The shadows fell correctly. The sand around the prints showed natural wind patterns. If this was fake, it was extremely well done. Could be 2 different trails that happened to intersect, I said. Could be, Except I watched the transformation happen. Tazba's voice was quiet but firm. I was following what I thought was a rabid coyote. Dispatch had gotten calls about livestock kills. I was maybe 50 yards behind it, keeping visual contact. Then it stopped, turned its head, and looked right at me, and I knew, that wasn't an animal. The eyes were wrong. Too intelligent, too aware. What did you do? Protocol 2. I broke eye contact immediately and backed away slowly. Didn't turn my back on it, didn't run, just moved backward until I was back at my vehicle. By the time I got there, the thing was gone. But I went back the next morning with backup and found those tracks. And your sergeant believed you? Desba? She was the backup. She's the one who told me I'd done exactly the right thing by following protocol. Tazba put his phone away. Look, I get that you spent 10 years in the city learning to think like Bilagana, cops, evidence, facts, things you can prove in court. But out here, some things don't need proving because everyone already knows they're real. The question isn't whether you believe, it's whether you're smart enough to stay alive while you learn. Before I could respond, the radio crackled. Dispatch, a woman's voice speaking in accented English mixed with Navajo. All units, we have a welfare check requested at the Little Water Chapter House. Caller reports elderly resident, Hastian Zilth, hasn't been seen in 4 days. Family can't reach him by phone. Tazba grabbed the radio. Unit 12 responding. ETA 20 minutes. Copy, Unit 12. Be advised. Caller also reports unusual activity around the residence at night. Lights moving in the desert. Strange sounds. Tazba and I exchanged looks. What kind of sounds? He asked. Caller described them as whistling. Multiple sources, coming from different directions. I saw Tazba's jaw tighten. Copy that, we're en route. As we headed to the patrol vehicle, a white SUV with the distinctive markings of Navajo Nation police, I asked, the whistling. That's Protocol 3, right? Don't whistle at night because it calls things to you. Right, and if someone was whistling around Old Man Zilth's place for 4 nights straight, that's not good. Either someone's trying to call something to him, or something's already there and trying to call more. Or it's just coyotes, or wind through rock formations, or a dozen other natural explanations. Maybe. Tazba started the engine. But we're going to approach this like a potential hostile situation anyway. And you're going to follow my lead, because I've been doing this job for 4 years and I'm still alive. That should tell you something. The drive to Little Water took us north on Highway 64, then west on a dirt road that cut through classic high desert landscape. Sagebrush, juniper, sandstone formations rising from the earth in fantastic shapes. The October sun was bright and hot, but I could feel the cold that would come once it set. Up here, at 5,000 feet, the temperature could drop 40 degrees between day and night. Hastian Zilth's home was a traditional hogan, an 8-sided structure built from logs and covered with earth. The door facing east as tradition required. But next to it sat a more modern manufactured home, probably added in the last 20 years for convenience. A rusty pickup truck from the 90s sat in the yard, and a few scraggly chickens pecked at the dirt near a small shed. Everything looked normal. Quiet. Almost too quiet. I didn't hear the chickens making any noise, and they should have been clucking and scratching. Tazba noticed it too. No animal sounds, that's not right. We approached slowly, Tazba taking the lead as promised. I kept my hand near my service weapon, not on it, but close. Old LAPD habits. The door to the manufactured home was closed. Tazba knocked loudly. Navajo Police, Hastian Zilth? We're here to check on you. Your family called because they were worried. No response. He knocked again, louder. Sir, if you're in there, please respond. We just want to make sure you're okay. Still nothing. "We're going to check the traditional hogan first," Tasba said quietly. "If he's sick or injured, he might have gone there. Some of the elders prefer the old ways when they're not feeling well." We walked around to the hogan. The door, a simple wooden frame covered with a heavy blanket, was pulled aside. The interior was dark and cool, and even from outside, I could smell it. Death. I'd smelled it enough times in LA to recognize it instantly. That sweet, rotten odor that meant someone had been dead for at least a few days. Tasba smelled it too. He pulled out his flashlight and we entered cautiously. Hastian Zilth sat in the center of the hogan in a wooden chair, facing east as tradition dictated. He'd been dead for days, maybe since his family last heard from him. But it wasn't the body that made me stop and stare. It was what surrounded him. A perfect circle had been drawn on the dirt floor around the chair, maybe 8 feet in diameter. The substance used to draw it looked like ash, gray and fine, with a slight shimmer to it in the flashlight beam. And at 4 points around the circle, small piles of what looked like the same ash had been carefully arranged. "Corpse powder," Tasba whispered. "Jesus Christ. Someone marked him." Marked him for what? For the witch. For... He stopped himself, clearly not wanting to say the word from Protocol 1. For those things. This is a calling. Someone wanted him dead, and they used traditional witchcraft to do it. I moved closer to examine the circle, careful not to disturb it. The ash had a strange quality to it. Too fine to be wood ash, too uniform. What is corpse powder exactly? Ground up bones and ash from the dead, used in the worst kind of witchcraft. It's complicated. But basically, if you put this around someone's home, it marks them as a target. And the things that practice dark magic, they come for you. Tasba was already backing towards the door. "We need to call this in, and we need to get a Hatali out here immediately. Don't we need to secure the scene? Process evidence. The scene is already compromised the second that powder was placed. Traditional law takes precedence here, Mosi. We call Desba, she calls the tribal officials and a Hatali. They perform the cleansing ceremonies, and then, maybe, we can process what's left." As we stepped back outside, I noticed something I'd missed before. In the dirt around the hogan there were tracks, lots of them. Some human, some animal. And like in Tasba's photo, some that seemed to be transitioning from one to the other. "Tasba," I said quietly, "look at the ground." He followed my gaze and his face went pale. "We need to leave, now." "What? Why?" "Because whoever did this might still be watching. And if they are, we just contaminated their work by being here. They might decide we need to be dealt with too." As if in response to his words, I heard it. A whistle. Low and melodic, coming from somewhere in the desert to our west. Then another from the north, then a third from the south. We were being surrounded. "Get to the vehicle," Tasba said, his hand moving to his weapon. "Don't run, don't panic, but move fast." We walked quickly back to the SUV, scanning the landscape around us. The whistling continued, always from slightly different directions, never staying in one place long enough to pinpoint the source. I got into the passenger seat and Tasba started the engine immediately. As we pulled away from Hastian Zilth's property, I looked in the side mirror and saw them. 3 figures standing in the desert, maybe 100 yards from the hogan. Too far to make out details, but close enough to see that their proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin. Moving in ways that seemed just slightly off, like someone mimicking human movement without quite understanding how it worked. "Don't look at them," Tasba said sharply. "Eyes on the road, Protocol 2. I need to see what we're dealing with." "No, you don't. Because if you make eye contact, they know you can see them clearly. And that makes you interesting. You want to stay not interesting, trust me. We drove for 5 minutes in silence before Tasba picked up the radio. Unit D12 to dispatch. We have a 1054 at the Zilth residence. Elderly male, deceased, approximately 4 days. Scene shows evidence of... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Traditional criminal activity. Request Sergeant Bitsui and a traditional healer response. Copy Unit 12. Sergeant Bitsui is en route to your location. Healers are being contacted. What's your current status? We're clear of the scene, heading back to the station. Be advised there may be hostile individuals in the area. Recommend any responding units approach with extreme caution. After he hung up, I asked, what the hell did we just see? Exactly what the protocols warn about. Someone used witchcraft to kill that old man. And the practitioners of that witchcraft were there watching their handiwork. Maybe waiting to see if anyone would come investigate. Maybe marking their next targets. That's not possible. People don't kill with ash and circles and... With what? Magic? Tasba glanced at me. You're Dine, Mosi. You know the stories even if you pretend you don't. Our people have been dealing with these things for thousands of years. The skinwalkers, the witches, the ones who practice the dark side of our traditional medicine. They're real. They've always been real. The only question is whether you're going to accept that fast enough to stay alive. We pulled into the station 20 minutes later. Desba was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her vehicle. Her expression was grim. "Tell me," she said. Tasba gave her a full briefing. The body, the corpse powder circle, the ash piles, the tracks, the whistling, the figures in the desert. I stood there listening, still trying to process what I'd seen, still trying to fit it into frameworks that made sense to my LAPD-trained mind. Desba listened without interrupting, then nodded slowly. The Hatali Sheila is coming from many farms. She'll be here in a few hours. Until then, nobody goes back to that location. Nobody. She looked at me. How are you holding up, Mosi? I'm not sure what I saw. But you saw something. I saw something that doesn't fit my understanding of how things work. Good, that's honest. Desba pulled out the protocol card again. Your grandmother told me that when you were a boy you had the sight. You could see things others couldn't. Feel things. She said you were going to be trained as a medicine person until your parents died and you shut all that down, closed yourself off from the traditional ways. I don't remember that. Maybe you don't want to remember, but your grandmother said the sight doesn't leave you just because you ignore it. It just goes dormant. Desba handed me the card. Keep this. Study it. Follow it. Because things are going to start happening now, Mosi. The fact that you walked into a witch's killing ground on your first day, that's not coincidence. That's the old powers noticing your back, and they're going to test you. That night, I lay awake in the small trailer I was renting on the outskirts of Shiprock, staring at the ceiling and thinking about what I'd seen. The figures in the desert, the tracks that changed from human to animal, the circle of ash that had smelled wrong, felt wrong, like it was actively malevolent. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Stories she'd told me as a child. Warnings about the ones who walk on all fours at night. The witches who could take animal form. The importance of staying on the beauty way. The path of harmony and balance that was central to Navajo philosophy. I'd dismissed all of it as superstition. Primitive beliefs from a culture that predated modern science. But I'd also seen what I'd seen. And unless I was hallucinating, which was possible but unlikely, there was something in that desert that didn't fit into modern scientific frameworks. My phone buzzed with a text from Tasba. First day always sucks. Gets worse before it gets better. Follow the protocols. They work. I looked at the laminated card sitting on my nightstand. 7 rules that sounded like folklore, but were apparently survival instructions. Outside, somewhere in the desert darkness, something whistled, low and melodic. The same pattern I'd heard at Hastin Zilth's property. I sat up immediately, my heart hammering. Protocol 3 said don't whistle at night because it calls things to you. But what if those things were already here and they were calling to you? The whistle came again. Closer this time. Right outside my trailer. Then I heard my name. Mosi. My grandmother's voice, weak and tired, like she'd sounded in those final days. Mosi, I need help. I'm lost out here. My grandmother had been dead for 3 months. Whatever was outside my trailer, it wasn't her. Protocol 7. If you hear your name called from the desert at night, never answer. It's never who you think it is. I sat frozen on my bed, barely breathing, as my dead grandmother's voice called my name over and over, getting more desperate, more frightened. Every instinct screamed at me to go outside, to help her, to do something. But I remembered the figures in the desert, the way they moved wrong, the way they watched. So I sat in the darkness of my trailer, listening to something wear my grandmother's voice like a mask, calling my name into the desert night. Welcome to Navajo Nation policing, where the rules you learned in the academy won't save you, and the only thing between you and what lives in the darkness is knowledge passed down through 1,000 generations of survival. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed with every light in the trailer on, my service weapon on the nightstand, listening to the thing outside cycle through voices. My grandmother, my mother, my father, even my own voice calling to myself from the darkness. By the time the sun rose, the voices had stopped. I checked outside cautiously. Nothing. No tracks in the sand around my trailer, no signs anyone had been there. Just the desert, peaceful and empty in the early morning light. I showed up for my shift looking like hell. Tasba took one look at me and handed me a cup of coffee without comment. "It visited you last night, didn't it?" he said quietly. Something was outside my trailer, using voices, my dead family members. Protocol 7. You didn't answer, right? No, I followed the protocol. I drank the coffee, grateful for the caffeine. What would have happened if I'd opened the door? Depends on how hungry it was. Best case, you'd wake up 3 days later in the desert with no memory of what happened. Worst case, you'd become one of them, or just disappear. Tasba pulled up a file on the computer. Want to see something that'll really mess with your day? He showed me missing person reports, dozens of them, going back decades. All from the Navajo Nation, specifically the Shiprock area. Ages ranging from teenagers to elderly. No pattern in gender, family background, or lifestyle. But one thing connected them all. Each disappearance happened within a week of a new moon, and each person was last seen near Highway 491 after dark. Protocol 6, I said. During new moon, don't drive alone on Highway 491 past midnight. Right, that highway used to be called Highway 666 until they renamed it in 2003, the Devil's Highway. There's a reason for that name. Tasba closed the file. The stretch between Shiprock and Gallup is particularly bad. Something about the isolation, the darkness, the way the road cuts through empty desert for miles and miles. Perfect hunting ground. For what? For all of them, the skinwalkers, the hitchhiker spirits, things that don't have names in English. During the new moon, when it's darkest, they're most active. And that road, he shook his head. That road takes people. Desba entered the break room, looking like she'd had a rough night too. Shyla completed the cleansing ceremony at the Zilth property at dawn. The scene is clear for processing now if you want to go back. Do we? I asked. FBI wants a report. Tribal Council wants a report. And I want to know who the hell is practicing dark witchcraft in my jurisdiction. Her expression was hard. Get your gear, we're all going. The scene looked different in daylight. The Hogan, the manufactured home, the desert landscape, all mundane and ordinary in the bright October sun, but the feeling was different. The oppressive weight that had hung over everything yesterday was gone, replaced by something cleaner, lighter. Sheila was still there, a woman who looked to be in her 80s with long white hair and traditional clothing. She stood near the Hogan singing softly in Navajo, occasionally sprinkling something from a leather pouch. The cleansing is complete, she said in Navajo, then repeated in English when she saw me. But the evil that was here, it's still out there. Whoever did this, they're skilled in the dark ways, very skilled. Can you tell us anything about them? Desba asked respectfully. Male, young, maybe 30 winters, strong in the dark power but unbalanced, angry. Sheila's eyes were clouded with age, but somehow seemed to see more than younger eyes. And there's more than one. 3 of them working together. Very unusual, very dangerous. 3, I said, remembering the figures in the desert. We saw 3 yesterday. Then they saw you too. You're marked now, all of you. They'll be watching to see what you do. Sheila looked directly at me. Especially you, grandson of Evening Star Woman. She told me you were coming back. Told me you'd need guidance. You knew my grandmother? Of course. She was trained as a Hatali before she married your grandfather and chose a different path. But she never lost the knowledge, never lost the sight. Sheila approached me, studying my face with those clouded eyes. You have it too. The sight. I can see it in you, even though you've tried to bury it. That's why they're interested in you. You're not just a police officer to them. You're a challenge, a potential threat, or a potential recruit. I'm not joining any witches. No. But they don't know that yet. They'll test you, try to corrupt you, and if they can't corrupt you, they'll try to kill you. She pulled something from her pouch, a small leather bag on a cord. Wear this, protection medicine. Your grandmother was making it before she died. Asked me to finish it and give it to you when you came back. I took the bag. It was warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight and smelled of sage and other herbs I couldn't identify. Thank you. Thank your grandmother. She's the one still protecting you even from the other side. Sheila turned back to Desba. The body can be moved now, but burn the ash circles. Don't try to collect them as evidence. That powder carries the dark intention. It needs to be destroyed completely. After Sheila left, we processed the scene. Hasty and Zilth had died of what appeared to be natural causes, probably a heart attack or stroke. But the medical examiner would determine that officially. What we could determine was that he'd been dead for approximately 4 days, consistent with when his family last heard from him. The corpse powder circles were photographed extensively before Tazba burned them with a road flare, speaking prayers in Navajo as he did. The ash burned with a strange green flame and gave off a smell that made my eyes water. Whoever made this used human remains, Tazba said grimly. You can tell by how it burns. Regular ash doesn't do that. Where would someone get human remains? Grave robbing, or worse, they kill someone specifically to make the powder. He finished burning the last circle. This is serious dark magic, Mosi. The kind that gets you exiled from the nation if you're caught. Maybe worse, depending on what the traditional council decides. We spent the rest of the day interviewing Hastian Zilt's family and neighbors. Most were reluctant to talk about witchcraft directly. but several mentioned that the old man had been having problems with a younger relative, his grandson, Bidsy Gorman, age 32. Bidsy had wanted to inherit some land that Hastien Zilth owned, but the old man had refused, saying his grandson was walking a dark path and didn't deserve the blessing of the land. Bidsy Gorman, Desba said when we reported back. Yeah, I know him. Been arrested twice for assault, once for theft. Last known address is out near Hogback, but he moves around a lot. And his friends, she pulled up files on the computer. Naswood Dooley and Chayton Sells. All three of them have been suspected of grave desecration, though we could never prove it. They run together, cause trouble together. 3 suspects, I said. 3 figures in the desert. Could be coincidence. Could be them. Desba printed out their booking photos and addresses. We'll bring them in for questioning, but carefully. If they really are practicing witchcraft, confronting them directly could be dangerous. That evening, Tasba and I drove out to Bidsy Gorman's last known address, a rundown trailer in the Hogback area, about 15 miles east of Shiprock. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. We're cutting this close to dark, Tasba said, checking his watch. If he's not here, we come back tomorrow during daylight. Agreed. The trailer looked abandoned. Windows broken, door hanging open, trash scattered around the property. We approached cautiously, announcing ourselves as police. Inside, the trailer was empty of furniture, but not of activity. Someone had been using it recently. There were fresh footprints in the dust, empty food containers, and in the back bedroom, something that made my blood run cold. A workbench had been set up with tools and materials. Grinding stones still dusty with gray powder. Small clay jars filled with ash. And on the wall, drawn in what looked like dried blood, symbols I didn't recognize but that made my skin crawl just looking at them. This is where they make the corpse powder, Tasba said quietly. This is their workshop. We need to document this, get forensics out here. Yeah, but not tonight. We document, we leave, we come back tomorrow with backup and a hatali. He was already taking photos with his phone. Because if they come back while we're here... He didn't need to finish the sentence. The whistling started. The same pattern from Hastien Zilth's property, from outside my trailer, coming from multiple directions around the trailer. Out. Now. Tasba headed for the door. We made it to the patrol vehicle just as 3 figures emerged from the desert. In the dying light, I could see them more clearly than I wanted to. They looked human. Young Navajo men, wearing jeans and t-shirts. But the way they moved was wrong. Too fluid, too fast. And their eyes reflected our headlights like animals. Bidsy Gorman stood in the center, flanked by 2 others who had to be Naswood Dooley and Chayton Sells. They didn't approach the vehicle, just stood there about 50 feet away, watching us. Then Bidsy smiled, and spoke in a voice that carried clearly across the distance, even though he couldn't possibly be speaking loud enough for us to hear. Officer Ashkey, welcome home. Your grandmother sends her regards. My blood turned to ice. Tasba hit the gas and we fishtailed out of there, kicking up a plume of dust. In the rearview mirror, I saw all 3 figures watching us go. They didn't chase us. They didn't need to. They delivered their message. They knew who I was. They knew about my grandmother, and they'd been waiting for us. How did they know we'd come tonight? I asked. They're skinwalkers, Mosi. They can see things normal people can't. Feel things. They probably knew the moment we started investigating Hastien Zilth's death that we'd eventually come looking for them. Tasba was driving fast, but controlled. And now they know we know what they are, which means they have to make a decision, try to scare us off, or eliminate us. We're police. We have the law on our side. The law? Tazba laughed, but there was no humor in it. Brother, these guys don't care about the law. Navajo law, federal law, none of it matters to them. They've broken the biggest taboo in our culture. They've embraced dark witchcraft. They're already considered as good as dead by traditional standards. The only question is whether they take us with them before the community deals with them. We reported back to Desba, who immediately called a meeting with tribal council leadership and several Hatali, including Sheila. I wasn't invited to the actual meeting. Too new, too much of an outsider despite being Navajo, but Tazba filled me in afterward. They're organizing a traditional response, he said. A group of medicine people will perform protection ceremonies for everyone involved in the investigation, and they're authorizing us to move forward with arrests, but only during daylight hours and only with backup. No lone operations, no nighttime raids. That gives them free reign after dark. That keeps us alive. There's a reason these protocols exist, Mosi. The skinwalkers are strongest at night, especially during the new moon. We don't have an advantage then, so we don't fight them then. When's the next new moon? 3 days. I spent those 3 days learning more than I ever wanted to know about skinwalkers, or Yi Naulushi, though everyone avoided saying the word. Shyla came to the station and gave us a briefing that felt more like a horror movie than a police training. They are witches who have killed a close family member to gain their power, she explained. This act breaks them spiritually, separates them from the beauty way. In exchange, they gain the ability to wear animal skins and take that animal's form. Coyote is most common, but also wolf, bear, owl, crow. They actually transform? I asked. Yes and no. Their physical body changes, but it's never quite right. There's always something off about them. The eyes, the movement, the smell. Animals know instinctively that they're wrong and will flee from them. Humans with the sight can tell too, if they know what to look for. The 3 suspects, Bitsy Gorman, Naswood Dooley, Chayton Sells. Are they all skinwalkers? Yes, very rare for them to work together like this. Usually skinwalkers are solitary or work in pairs at most. 3 together means they're planning something big, something that requires combined power. Like what? Shyla's expression grew grave. Like creating more of their kind. They're trying to recruit. Your grandmother told me Beedsy approached her years ago, tried to convince her to teach him the dark ways. She refused and warned his family, which is probably why he hated her so much. Now he's trying to expand his circle, find others who are angry, bitter, willing to do terrible things for power. And killing his own grandfather was what? A demonstration. A sacrifice. The old man had spiritual protection, land that was blessed. Beedsy couldn't touch that land as long as Hastian Zilth lived, but with his grandfather dead and the protection broken through dark witchcraft, now Beedsy can claim it, use it for his purposes. What purposes? That's what we need to find out. But nothing good comes from skinwalkers gathering in groups. The day before the new moon, we attempted to arrest all 3 suspects, but when we arrived at their known locations, they were gone. The trailer at Hogback was empty. Bidsy's mother's house in Shiprock, empty. Chayton's girlfriend's place in Farmington, empty. They'd known we were coming and had scattered. They'll surface again during the new moon, Desba said. That's when they're strongest. That's when they'll feel confident enough to move openly. Until then, everyone stays alert. No one travels alone. No one goes out after dark unless absolutely necessary. And everyone wears protection medicine. She distributed small leather pouches like the one Sheila had given me. These have been blessed by 5 different hatali. They're not a guarantee, but they help. That night, the night before the new moon, I lay in my trailer with every light on again. The protection pouch around my neck, my service weapon close at hand. The logical part of my brain, the part trained by LAPD, kept insisting this was insane. I was a police officer afraid of 3 men who believed they could turn into animals. This was ridiculous, but the part of me that had grown up here, that had listened to my grandmother's stories, that had seen those figures in the desert moving wrong, that part knew better. Around midnight I heard scratching at my door, then at the windows, then on the roof, like something with claws was circling my trailer, testing for weak points. Then the voice came, my own voice, calling from outside. "Mosi, let me in. I'm locked out. Mosi, please. It's cold out here." The scratching intensified. Whatever was out there was getting agitated that I wasn't responding. "Mosi, your grandmother is here with me. She wants to talk to you. Let us in." I sat frozen on my bed, gripping my weapon, reminding myself that whatever was outside was not me, was not my grandmother, was not anything I wanted inside my home. The scratching suddenly stopped. Then silence. Complete silence. No insects, no wind, nothing. Then something massive hit my trailer with enough force to rock it on its foundation. The lights flickered, the windows rattled, another impact, and another, like something huge was ramming the trailer, trying to break through the walls. I grabbed my phone and called Tazba. He answered on the first ring. "It's outside my place," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Something big, ramming the trailer. I'm 5 minutes away. Stay inside. Don't open the door for anything." The ramming continued, each impact stronger than the last. Through the window I caught glimpses of something massive moving in the darkness. Too large to be a man, too large to be a coyote, something in between, and wrong in every way. Then it spoke, and the voice was so loud it seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You can't hide behind walls forever, grandson of Evening Star Woman. The new moon comes tomorrow, and we will be waiting for you on Highway 491. One final impact, hard enough to crack the window. Then silence. Real silence with normal night sounds returning. Tazba arrived minutes later with 2 other officers. They searched the area around my trailer and found tracks. Lots of them. Some human, some coyote, some that were neither, and both at once. And gouges in the side of the trailer where something with claws had tried to tear through the metal siding. "You need to move," Tazba said. "Tonight. Get your stuff and crash at the station or at one of our houses. Anywhere with more people, more protection." They specifically mentioned Highway 491. The new moon, they're planning something. "Yeah, and they're trying to terrorize you before it happens. Make you scared, unstable, easier to manipulate." He helped me gather my essentials. "But we're not going to give them that satisfaction. You're going to stay with me and my family tonight. We'll have a Hatali come perform protection ceremonies. And tomorrow, we'll figure out what these bastards are planning and how to stop it." As we drove to Tazba's house in town, passing through the quiet streets of Shiprock, I looked out at the desert beyond the lights. Somewhere out there, 3 skinwalkers were preparing for something. Something that involved Highway 491, the new moon, and apparently me specifically. My grandmother had tried to warn me, tried to teach me the old ways that would have prepared me for this. But I'd been too angry, too stubborn, too convinced that modern science and modern law enforcement were all I'd ever need. Now, I was learning the hard way that some things couldn't be fought with guns and badges. Some things required older knowledge, older ways, older understanding of what lived in the darkness beyond human civilization. Tomorrow was the new moon, and whatever the skinwalkers had planned, I'd be facing it whether I was ready or not. I barely slept at Tasba's house, despite the protection ceremonies and the presence of his wife and 2 young children. Every sound outside made me tense. Every shadow seemed to move wrong. His wife, Ayana, was kind but cautious around me. She made breakfast in silence while Tasba got ready for shift, occasionally glancing at me like she was trying to determine if I was bringing danger to her family. "I'm sorry," I finally said, "for putting you all at risk." "You didn't choose this," she replied quietly. "They chose you, but Tasba says you're strong, that you have the sight like your grandmother did. Maybe that's why they're so interested." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I spent 10 years running away from who I was supposed to be, and now it's coming back to haunt me." "Good." She set a plate of eggs and fry bread in front of me. "Then maybe you'll finally stop running and face it." At the station, Desba had assembled everyone, all 6 officers currently on duty, plus several tribal rangers and even 2 FBI agents who worked the reservation cases. The FBI guys looked skeptical as Desba laid out the situation. "We have 3 suspects in a murder case," she said, displaying the photos of Bidsy Gorman, Naswood Dooley, and Chayton Sells. "They're also suspects in multiple grave desecration cases and are believed to be practicing traditional dark witchcraft." One of the FBI agents, a young white guy who couldn't have been more than 30, started to say something, but his partner, an older Navajo man named Agent Yazzie, shut him down with a look. "How credible is the witchcraft angle?" Agent Yazzie asked. "Very," Desba replied. "We have physical evidence of corpse powder at the murder scene, witness testimony about traditional dark practices, and," she hesitated, "multiple officers have had encounters with the suspects that suggest supernatural abilities." The young FBI agent, Patterson, according to his badge, couldn't contain himself. "Supernatural? Seriously? We're federal law enforcement, not Ghostbusters." "Then you're welcome to leave," Desba said coldly. "This is Navajo Nation jurisdiction. We invited you as a courtesy because the murder victim's grandson may have crossed state lines, but we don't need your skepticism or your disrespect for our cultural beliefs." Agent Yazzie spoke up. "What my partner means is that we need to focus on evidence that will hold up in court. Trackable movements, physical evidence, witness testimony that doesn't rely on supernatural explanations." "Fair enough," Desba said. "Here's what we know for certain. Bidsy Gorman had motive and opportunity to kill his grandfather. He and his associates have been seen in the area. They're currently evading arrest. And we have credible intelligence that they're planning something tonight during the new moon, specifically on Highway 491. "Intelligence from who?" Patterson asked. "From the suspects themselves," I said. "They told me directly, last night outside my residence." "They came to your home?" "Yes, and made threats. Specifically mentioned Highway 491 and the new moon." Patterson looked at his notes. "Highway 491 between Shiprock and Gallup. That's about 60 miles of mostly empty desert. What are we supposed to do, set up checkpoints every mile?" "No," Agent Yazzie said thoughtfully. "But we can identify the most isolated stretches. The places where someone would go if they wanted privacy for whatever they're planning. Set up surveillance there." "There's one spot in particular," Tasba said, pulling up a map. "About 30 miles south of Shiprock, there's an old abandoned trading post, been closed since the 1970s. Very isolated, but there's a dirt road that leads back to it from the highway. If I wanted a place to conduct ceremonies or rituals away from prying eyes, that's where I'd go." Desba nodded. "All right, here's the plan. We set up surveillance of the trading post starting at dusk. Multiple units, good sight lines, no one goes in alone. If the suspects show up, we observe first, then move to arrest only when we have overwhelming advantage. No heroics. No unnecessary risks. And what if they're doing what you think they're doing? Patterson asked. What if we observe them performing some kind of ritual? Then we document it, and we stop it, Desba said firmly. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, Agent Patterson, what these men are doing is illegal. Grave desecration, murder, terroristic threatening. That's enough to arrest them on. As the meeting broke up, Agent Yazzie pulled me aside. Your grandmother was Evening Star Woman, right? I knew her. She helped my mother through a difficult time about 20 years ago. You believe in the traditional ways? I believe that there are things in this world that don't fit neatly into FBI training manuals, he said carefully. And I believe that people who've lived on this land for thousands of years might know things that recent arrivals don't. So, yeah, I take the witchcraft angle seriously. And I'll make sure Patterson does too, even if I have to frame it in terms he can accept. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If those three really are what you think they are, tonight's going to be dangerous. Make sure you're wearing protection. He touched his own chest where I could see the outline of a medicine pouch under his shirt. And follow your sergeant's lead. She's got good instincts. We spent the afternoon preparing, checking equipment, reviewing maps, coordinating with tribal rangers who knew the area well. Shyla came by to perform a protection ceremony for everyone participating in the operation, even the skeptical FBI agents. Patterson looked uncomfortable but went through with it, probably not wanting to offend. As sunset approached, we deployed to our positions. Desba, Tazba, and I took point on a ridge overlooking the old trading post. Agent Yazzie and Patterson set up to the north. 2 tribal rangers covered the south approach. Everyone had night vision equipment, body armor, and clear rules of engagement. Observe first, don't engage unless absolutely necessary. And if anything strange happens, call for immediate backup. The old trading post was exactly what you'd expect. A dilapidated stone building, roof mostly collapsed, surrounded by rusted-out vehicles and broken fencing. In daylight, it would have looked merely abandoned. In the gathering darkness, it looked like a perfect place for bad things to happen. How long do we wait? I asked quietly. As long as it takes, Desba replied. The new moon is tonight. If they're going to do something, it'll be between midnight and dawn. That's when the power is strongest, according to traditional knowledge. The hours crawled by. The temperature dropped steadily, desert cold seeping through our jackets. We took turns watching through night vision scopes, seeing the trading post in eerie green detail. At 11:47 p.m., Tazba tensed. Movement, southwest side. I looked through my scope and saw them. 3 figures approaching the trading post on foot, coming from deep desert rather than from the highway. They moved in that wrong way I'd seen before, too fluid, too fast, not quite human. That's them, I confirmed. Gorman, Dooley, and Sells. We watched as they entered the trading post through a collapsed wall. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, light began to glow from inside the building. Not electric light, but flickering orange like fire. They're starting something, Desba said. She radioed the other units. All teams, suspects are inside the structure. Hold positions and observe. Do not approach without my order. Through the scope, I could see shadows moving inside the trading post. The 3 men were arranging something, making preparations. Then they began to chant. I couldn't hear it at this distance, but I could see their mouths moving in unison, their bodies swaying. What are they doing? Patterson's voice came over the radio, strained. Ritual preparation, Agent Yazzie replied. Stay calm and keep watching. The chanting continued for maybe 20 minutes. Then something changed. The fire inside the trading post suddenly burned brighter, casting harsh shadows through the broken walls. And the three figures began to change. Even through the night vision scope, I could see it happening. Their bodies contorting, reshaping, dropping to all fours. The transformation was grotesque, painful looking, like their bones were breaking and reforming. Within minutes, where 3 men had stood, 3 large coyotes now paced around the fire. "Jesus Christ," Patterson breathed over the radio. "Did you all just see that?" "Confirm visual," Desba said, her voice steady despite what we'd just witnessed. "Subjects appear to have transformed. All units maintain positions." But the coyotes weren't done. They circled the fire 3 times, then threw back their heads and howled. The sound carried across the desert, raising every hair on my body. And in the distance, other howls answered, many others. "We've got more movement," one of the tribal rangers reported. "Multiple animals approaching the trading post from all directions. Coyotes, maybe 20 or 30 of them." Through my scope, I watched as the pack converged on the trading post. But these weren't normal coyotes, and they moved wrong too, and their eyes reflected the firelight with an intelligence that was distinctly not animal. "They're calling more of their kind," Tazba whispered. "This is a gathering. They're trying to build an army." The 3 original skinwalkers and the arriving pack formed a circle around the fire. More chanting began, even more unnatural, coming from coyote throats, and in the center of the circle, something began to materialize. At first, it looked like smoke or shadow, but it was taking shape, becoming more solid. A figure, tall and thin, with antlers or horns sprouting from its head. As it solidified, I realized I was looking at something that had no business existing in the physical world. "What the hell is that?" Patterson demanded. "Something they're summoning," Agent Yazzie said quietly. "Something old. Something that shouldn't be called back." The figure, the entity, opened its eyes. Even from a quarter-mile away, I could see them glowing red in the darkness. And suddenly, I knew with absolute certainty that it was looking directly at me. "It sees us," I said. "It knows we're here." "All units, fall back," Desba ordered. "Controlled retreat to vehicles. Move now." But we'd barely started moving when the howling changed. It became louder, more aggressive, more coordinated, and the entire pack of skinwalker coyotes broke from their circle and started racing toward our positions. "They're coming!" one of the rangers shouted. "Multiple hostiles incoming!" We ran for the vehicles, but the skinwalkers were incredibly fast. The first ones reached the ranger positions before we'd made it halfway. Over the radio, I heard gunshots, screaming, chaos. "Ranger 1 is down. I repeat, Ranger 1 is..." The radio cut to static. Tazba, Desba, and I made it to our vehicle. Tazba was driving. Desba was in the passenger seat calling for emergency backup, and I was in the back with my weapon drawn, watching as maybe a dozen coyotes closed the distance behind us. We pulled onto Highway 491 and accelerated. But the coyotes kept pace impossibly. Some of them began transforming mid-run, shifting between animal and human form, their bodies grotesque shadows in our headlights. "They're not going to let us leave," Tazba said, pushing the vehicle faster. One of the creatures leaped onto our hood, claws scrabbling on metal. Through the windshield I saw its face, human and coyote at the same time, with red eyes and too many teeth. It raised one misshapen arm to smash through the glass. I fired 3 rounds through the windshield. The creature flew backward off the hood, but 2 more immediately took its place. "Hold on!" Tazba yanked the wheel hard, swerving violently. The creatures tumbled off and he accelerated again. Behind us, I could see the pack regrouping for another chase. But ahead, something worse appeared. The tall figure with young antlers was standing in the middle of Highway 491, directly in our path. It didn't move, just stood there waiting. "Don't slow down," Desba yelled. "Drive through it." Tasba gritted his teeth and kept the accelerator floored. We were doing 90 miles per hour when we hit the figure. There was no impact. We passed straight through it like it wasn't even there. But as we did, the temperature inside the vehicle dropped to freezing. Frost formed instantly on the windows, and I heard my grandmother's voice clear as day, speaking in Navajo. "The fourth world is breaking. They're trying to bring through the old darkness. You must stop them, grandson. You must finish what I started." Then the warmth returned. The frost vanished, and we were past the figure. In the rearview mirror, I saw it, and the pack of skinwalkers stopped their pursuit. They just stood there on the highway, watching us escape. "What the hell just happened?" Tasba demanded. "I think my grandmother just saved us," I said, "from the other side." We rendezvoused with Agent Yazzie and Patterson 3 miles down the highway. They'd made it out with minor injuries. But the 2 tribal rangers, only one had made it to his vehicle. The other had been taken by the pack. "We need a full tactical response," Patterson said, all his earlier skepticism gone. His hands were shaking. "What we just saw, those weren't men, those weren't animals. Whatever the hell they were, we need military-grade backup to deal with them." "By the time any backup arrives, they'll be gone," Desba said. She looked at me. "Your grandmother spoke to you. What did she say?" I repeated the message. "The fourth world is breaking. They're trying to bring through the old darkness." "The fourth world." Shyla's voice came over the radio. Someone must have patched her into our frequency. "In Navajo cosmology, we live in the fourth world now. The 3 previous worlds were destroyed because of imbalance and evil. If they're trying to break the fourth world, they're trying to bring back chaos from the previous worlds. Unleash old evils that were banished." "How do we stop it?" Desba asked. "You must complete the ceremony they started, but with opposite intention. Balance against chaos. Healing against harm. But it requires someone with traditional knowledge and spiritual strength. Someone who can walk between worlds." Everyone looked at me. "No," I said. "I don't have that training." I rejected all of that. "You have your grandmother's blood," Shyla said. "And her knowledge is in you whether you acknowledge it or not. She spent your whole childhood preparing you for this, even if you didn't realize it. The songs, the stories, the prayers, they're all still in your memory. You just have to remember." "I can't. You're the only one who can," Desba interrupted. "Shyla is too old to go back there. I don't have the training, none of us do. But you're the grandson of one of the most powerful medicine women this area has seen in generations. If she says you can do this, then you can." I thought about my grandmother, about all the nights she'd sung to me in Navajo, teaching me songs I'd thought were just lullabies, about the stories she'd told that I'd dismissed as folklore, about the prayers she'd made me memorize before I was old enough to understand what they meant. And I realized that Shyla was right. It was all still there, buried in my memory, waiting for me to need it. What do I have to do? Over the next 2 hours, with dawn approaching, Shyla walked me through the counter ritual. The songs I needed to sing, the prayers I needed to speak, the offerings I needed to make. It was all traditional Navajo ceremony, the kind that usually took years to learn. But my grandmother had given me the foundation, and Shyla was filling in the gaps. "You'll have to go back to the trading post," she said. "Enter the space where they performed their summoning, and you'll have to do this alone. Traditional law requires it. One person walking the dark path, one person walking the beauty way. Balance. They'll kill me the second I step onto that ground. Maybe. But your grandmother's protection is with you. And if you do this right, if you maintain perfect harmony and balance, their dark power can't touch you. It's like water and oil. They can't mix. And if I do it wrong, then you'll join them. Or die, or worse. The plan was insane. But it was all we had. As the sun began to rise, painting the desert in shades of pink and orange, we drove back to the trading post. The skinwalkers were gone. So was the summoned entity. But I could feel them nearby, watching, waiting to see what we would do. I got out of the vehicle alone, carrying only the medicine pouch my grandmother had made and the knowledge she'd spent 18 years drilling into me. Tasba, Desba, and the FBI agents stayed back, weapons ready. But they couldn't help me with this. This was between me and the darkness my grandmother had warned me about. I entered the trading post. The fire was still burning, impossibly bright despite no fuel source. The ash circles on the ground glowed faintly with malevolent power, and standing around the fire waiting for me were Bidsy Gorman, Naswood Dooley, and Chayton Sells, back in human form, smiling with too many teeth. "Grandson of Evening Star Woman," Bidsy said. "We've been waiting for you. Your grandmother was powerful, but she was old, bound by outdated traditions. You could be so much more. Join us. Learn the real power. Become what you were always meant to be." I took a deep breath and began to sing. The words came from somewhere deep inside, from those childhood nights when my grandmother had sung me to sleep. A healing song, a protection song. A song about balance and beauty and walking the right path. The skinwalker's smiles faltered. I sang louder, adding the second verse, the third. With each verse, the fire burned brighter, but cleaner. The malevolent glow faded, replaced by pure light. "Stop," Bidsy snarled. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll ruin everything." But I kept singing. And as I sang, I began to remember everything. Every story my grandmother had told me. Every prayer she'd taught me. Every lesson about balance and harmony and the beauty way. I remembered who I was supposed to be. The darkness they'd summoned began to retreat, pulled back through whatever door they'd opened. The skinwalkers screamed, their forms flickering between human and animal as the power they'd stolen began to leave them. And I sang until the sun fully rose, until the darkness was completely banished, until 3 young men stood before me, just men again, powerless and terrified. "Freeze! Hands up!" Tasba and Desba rushed in, weapons drawn. The 3 men didn't resist. They barely seemed conscious, swaying on their feet like they'd just woken from a nightmare. As we led them out in handcuffs, Agent Yazzie approached me. "What you just did in there, I've never seen anything like it." "My grandmother taught me," I said. "I just finally learned to listen." The arrests made headlines across the Navajo Nation and beyond. 3 men charged with murder, grave desecration, assault on federal officers, and a dozen other crimes. The media coverage was careful. Outlets serving the reservation communities reported it straight, including references to traditional witchcraft and dark practices. Outside media sanitized it, talking about a cult and traditional beliefs gone wrong. I didn't care what they called it. We had stopped them. The darkness they'd tried to summon was banished. The ranger who'd been taken, we found him 2 days later, wandering in the desert with no memory of what happened but otherwise unharmed. Whatever the skinwalkers had planned for him, we'd interrupted it in time. But the case itself was complicated. Bidsy Gorman, Naswood Dooley, and Chayton Sells all claimed they couldn't remember anything about that night. Medical examinations showed they were malnourished, dehydrated, and had injuries consistent with the transformation I'd witnessed. Broken bones that had healed wrong, tissue damage, psychological trauma. They're victims as much as perpetrators, the tribal prosecutor told me during one of many meetings. The witchcraft, it consumed them, twisted them. By traditional law, they should be banished from the nation. By federal law, they should be imprisoned. By medicine people's judgment, they need healing. What about Hastian Zilth? I asked. He's still dead. His family still deserves justice. And they'll get it. But justice in Navajo tradition isn't just punishment. It's restoration of balance. These 3 men will face consequences, but they'll also undergo traditional healing ceremonies if they agree to it. Try to bring them back to the beauty way. It wasn't the kind of clean resolution I'd gotten used to in Los Angeles, but I was learning that on the reservation, justice looked different. More complicated. More focused on healing entire communities rather than just punishing individuals. The FBI closed their case with unusual speed. Agent Yazzie told me privately that higher-ups wanted the whole thing buried. Too many unexplainable elements. Too many officers and agents who'd witnessed things that didn't fit into official reality. There's a reason we have agents like me working reservation cases, he said. People who understand that the world is bigger and stranger than what they teach at Quantico. But the Bureau as an institution, they're not ready for that conversation. So, what goes in your report? A carefully worded version that hits all the legal requirements without mentioning anything supernatural. Cult activity, drug-induced hallucinations, mass hysteria. He smiled slightly. The truth is in there if you know how to read between the lines, but most people won't look that closely. 3 weeks after the arrests, I sat in Sheila's home as she prepared traditional medicine. Her small house smelled of sage and cedar smoke, herbs and healing. Your grandmother would be proud, she said, grinding dried plants with practiced movements. You remembered the songs, performed the ceremony correctly, restored balance. I almost got people killed. The ranger who was taken, he has nightmares now. Can't sleep without all the lights on. Yes, because he saw the darkness, but he's alive. And the darkness was sent back to where it belongs. That's what matters. Sheila looked at me with those clouded eyes that somehow saw more than mine. Your grandmother spent 18 years preparing you for one night. One moment when you would have to choose. The easy path of power and anger, or the hard path of balance and healing. You chose correctly. I didn't feel like I was choosing. I just did what she taught me. That's what choosing correctly looks like. The right path becomes natural when you've trained for it long enough. She poured the ground herbs into a cloth bag. This is for you. Protection medicine. Stronger than what I gave you before. You'll need it. Why? The skinwalkers are in custody. Those 3, yes. But darkness exists in more than 3 people. You've proven yourself now. Proven you have power. Proven you can walk between worlds. Other practitioners will be interested. Some will want to test you. Some will want to recruit you. Some will want to eliminate you before you become a threat. That's a comforting thought. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to prepare you. Sheila tied the medicine bag with red cord. You're not just a police officer anymore, Mosi Ashki. You're a bridge between the old ways and the new. Between traditional law and modern law. The Navajo Nation needs people like you. People who can operate in both worlds. My grandmother was that person. I'm just a cop who finally listened to her teachings. Your grandmother was powerful, yes, but she was born in a different time. She understood the old ways perfectly, but struggled with the new world. Sheila pressed the medicine bag into my hands. You understand both. You've walked in the outside world. learned their ways, then came back and reclaimed your heritage. That makes you more valuable than you realize. Over the following months, I settled into my role with the Navajo Nation Police. The protocols that had seemed like superstition on my first day became second nature. I learned when to investigate by the book and when to call in a hatali, when to use my LAPD training, and when to trust traditional knowledge. Tasba remained my partner and became a good friend. He'd been right that first day. The job got worse before it got better. But it did get better. We dealt with the usual police work: domestics, thefts, traffic accidents, drunk and disorderlies. But we also dealt with things that never would have crossed my desk in Los Angeles. A family in Ticnos Post reported their teenage daughter was having night terrors and sleepwalking. Standard police wouldn't have jurisdiction, but they called us because she kept trying to walk into the desert at night. Turned out someone had performed a calling ceremony on her, trying to lure her away from her family. We found out who, stopped them, and got the girl proper healing ceremonies. She's fine now. An elderly man in Lukachukai reported someone was leaving cursed objects on his property. We investigated, documented everything, and tracked down the culprit. A neighbor dispute that had escalated into traditional witchcraft. Resolved it before anyone got hurt. A tourist driving through took a wrong turn and ended up on a dirt road near some old ruins. Started having car trouble, saw strange lights, heard voices calling to him. By the time he made it back to the highway, he was nearly incoherent with terror. We knew exactly what he'd encountered. Spirits that guard old sites, ones that don't like strangers trespassing. We explained, carefully, so he wouldn't think we were crazy, that certain areas were off limits and helped him get his car repaired. He left the reservation immediately and probably tells people about the weird cops in New Mexico to this day. Each case taught me something new, or rather, reminded me of something my grandmother had tried to teach me years ago. 6 months after the Skinwalker incident, Desba called me into her office. She looked tired but satisfied. The tribal council approved the new training protocols, she said, sliding a document across her desk. Starting next year, all Navajo Nation police officers will receive formal training in traditional law and cultural practices, not just a lecture during orientation, but ongoing education, working with hatali, learning to recognize signs of traditional crimes, understanding when to bring in traditional authorities. That's good. That's really good. It was your case that pushed it through. What happened with Beadsy and his group. It proved we need officers who can operate in both worlds. The council wants you to help develop the curriculum, work with Shyla and other medicine people to create training materials. I'm not qualified to teach traditional knowledge. I'm still learning most of it myself. Which makes you perfect for the job. You know what officers like you need to know: practical application, not decades of ceremonial training. You can bridge the gap. Desba leaned back in her chair. And there's something else. The FBI wants to create a specialized unit for reservation cases involving traditional crimes. They want Navajo Nation Police to take the lead, with FBI support. Agent Yazzie recommended you to head the tribal side of the task force. I've been on the job for 6 months, and you've accomplished more in those 6 months than most officers do in 5 years. You stopped 3 skinwalkers from summoning something that could have threatened the entire region. You did it using traditional knowledge that most people have forgotten. That makes you exactly who we need. I thought about it. A specialized unit. Training new officers. Working cases that most of law enforcement didn't even believe existed. It was a long way from LAPD homicide, but it felt right in a way that city police work never had. All right, I said, I'll do it. Good, because we've already got your first case for the task force. She pulled up a file on her computer. Disappearances along Highway 160 near the Arizona border. 4 people in the last 3 months, all young adults, all last seen driving at night. And, she paused, all had been asking around about skinwalkers before they vanished. Like they were looking for them. That's incredibly stupid. Yes, but it's also exactly the kind of case we need you for. Local PD is treating it as standard missing persons. FBI is looking at trafficking or serial killer angles. But the traditional signs are all there. Protocol 6, Protocol 7, multiple violations. Whatever's happening, it's not going to be solved by conventional police work. She forwarded the file to me. Take a few days to review it. Talk to Shyla, talk to the families, get a feel for what we're dealing with. Then put together a task force plan. You'll have full support from tribal police and FBI resources. As I left her office, Tasba was waiting in the hallway. Heard you're moving up. Task force leader, training coordinator. Pretty impressive for a guy who showed up 6 months ago thinking the protocols were superstition. I had a good teacher, I said, meaning both him and my grandmother. You had lots of teachers. You just finally decided to listen. He handed me a coffee. I also heard about the Highway 160 case. That's bad territory, the stretch near Cow Springs especially. Multiple jurisdictions, remote area, and the spiritual atmosphere out there is heavy. Heavy how? Old battlegrounds, places where bad things happened during the Long Walk, before that even. The land remembers violence. Sometimes it attracts more violence, or things that feed on violence. He sipped his own coffee. You're going to need a good team for this one. People who won't panic when things get weird. I'm hoping you're volunteering. Of course. Someone has to keep you from getting yourself killed while you're busy being a hero. That evening, I drove out to my grandmother's old house. I'd been avoiding it since she died, couldn't face the memories, but now I needed something from there. The house was small, traditional in style, sitting on a plot of land that had been in our family for generations. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it. Her loom with half-finished weaving, her medicine bundles hanging from the ceiling, her books and journals written in both Navajo and English. I found what I was looking for in her bedroom, a wooden box she'd always kept locked. She'd left the key with Shyla, who'd given it to me with instructions not to open it until I was ready. Inside the box were journals, dozens of them, going back 50 years. My grandmother's records of every ceremony she'd performed, every case she'd helped with, every encounter with the supernatural she'd documented. It was an encyclopedia of traditional knowledge, written in her careful handwriting. And on top of the journals was a letter addressed to me. My grandson, if you're reading this, I am gone, and you have finally opened your eyes to what you are meant to be. I'm sorry I couldn't teach you everything before I left. I'm sorry your anger and grief kept you from learning when you were young. But I always knew you would find your way back. You are the bridge, Mosi, between old and new, between traditional and modern, between the world people see and the world that really exists beneath the surface. This is not an easy path. You will see things that frighten you. You will face darkness that most people never know exists. You will be alone sometimes, caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. But you will also save lives, restore balance, help people who have nowhere else to turn. And you will understand what your people have known for thousands of years, that the world is full of mystery, power, and beauty beyond what modern science can explain. These journals contain everything I learned in 70 years of walking between worlds. Study them. Use them. Add your own knowledge to them, then pass them on to whoever comes after you. Walk in beauty, my grandson. I am proud of you. I was always proud of you, even when you ran away. because I knew you would come home. Yoshima Sani, I sat on the floor of her bedroom and cried for the first time since she died. Not from grief alone, but from understanding. She'd known. She'd always known that I would reject the teachings, leave the reservation, try to become someone else. And she'd loved me anyway, prepared me anyway, trusted that I would eventually find my way back. When I finally stopped crying, I loaded all the journals into my truck. They would form the foundation of the training program DESBA wanted me to develop. Combined with modern police procedures and FBI resources, we could create something unique, a law enforcement approach that honored both worlds. Later that night, I sat in my new apartment. I'd moved out of the trailer after the Skinwalker attack and began reading my grandmother's earliest journals. The entries from 1975 detailed cases remarkably similar to what I was dealing with now. Skinwalkers, witchcraft, disappearances along remote highways, the same patterns repeating across generations. But she'd also documented solutions, ceremonies that worked, protocols that kept people safe. Traditional knowledge that could be combined with modern police work to actually solve cases that would otherwise remain mysteries. My phone rang. Tazba. "You need to see this," he said without preamble. "News report just came in. Another disappearance on Highway 160. Young woman, 23, last seen at a gas station in Tiknos Post 3 hours ago. Her car was found abandoned near Cow Springs. And Mosi, there were tracks around the car. The kind that change from human to animal. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I grabbed my gear and headed out, I touched the medicine pouch around my neck, the one Shyla had made, strengthened with my grandmother's protection. I thought about the protocols I'd learned, the songs I'd remembered, the balance between traditional knowledge and modern law enforcement. 6 months ago, I'd been a Los Angeles cop running from my heritage, convinced that modern science and police procedures were all anyone needed. Now I was a Navajo Nation police officer heading into the desert to track something that most of the world didn't believe existed. My grandmother had been right. This wasn't an easy path, but it was my path, the one I'd been trained for since childhood, even when I didn't know it. The highway stretched ahead into darkness, lit only by my headlights and the stars overhead. Somewhere out there, someone was in danger. Something was hunting, and I was one of the few people with the knowledge and training to do something about it. I thought about my grandmother's letter. Walk in beauty, my grandson. I was trying, every day I was trying. The radio crackled with Tazba's voice. "Mosi, we've got something. Fresh tracks leading away from the vehicle, heading into the desert, and..." He paused. "We can hear whistling, multiple sources moving in the same direction as the tracks. Protocol 3. Don't whistle at night, it calls things to you." "I'm 5 minutes out," I said. "Nobody follows those tracks until I get there, and Tazba, make sure everyone's wearing their protection medicine." "Already done. We learned from last time." As I pushed the accelerator harder, racing toward another case that existed in the space between worlds, I felt my grandmother's presence. Not literally, I wasn't being haunted, but her teachings, her knowledge, her preparation of me for exactly this life. It was all there, guiding me. The Navajo Nation stretched out around me in the darkness. 27,000 square miles of sacred land, ancient power, and mysteries that predated the United States by thousands of years. Most cops would never understand it. Most people would never believe it. But I understood. I believed. And I would use every tool at my disposal: modern police training, traditional knowledge, FBI resources, medicine, people's wisdom, to protect the people who called this land home. The highway curved ahead, and I could see the flashing lights of police vehicles in the distance. Another case. another chance to walk between worlds and restore balance. My name is Mosiash Key, officer with the Navajo Nation Police. And this is what I do. I protect people from things they don't believe in. I enforce laws older than this country. I walk the line between the world you see and the world that really exists. And I wouldn't have it any other way.